It's official. We have now come to the end of what I call the classic era, with 6 out of 19 movies skipped because I really don't give a damn about them. Sorry, maybe another time.
Oh, you're really letting the oxygen out of my tank here.
Walt Disney's The Jungle Book was released in 1967 and was based off of the Mowgli stories by Rudyard Kipling, though very loosely. This movie smashed the day it was released, and to this day, it's everyone's childhood. Everyone. But despite the praises it got then and now, it's forever known for its troublesome production history, probably the worst out of all from what I'm aware of. During the 5 years of production, Walt was really persistent on revamping Kipling's work after the mediocre results The Sword and the Stone got, which led to Kipling's granddaughter never forgiving him for simply mispronouncing Mowgli, and Bill Peet leaving the studio because he wanted to stick with his source material.
And Walt says, why not? We're going to make our own Jungle Book, and we'll do it our way.
To cap it all off, they lost one of the movie's actresses, Verna Felton, and then one day later, Walt himself died of lung cancer, never getting to see this movie's success. Whether you find it on YouTube or on your Jungle Book DVD, I really recommend the behind-the-scenes stuff regarding the movie's history. It's even got Pixar legend Brad Bird in it. Sweet. So before we swing into my take on the film, let's begin the plot synopsis. The story begins in the jungles of India, which you'll soon mistake as a 1960s Las Vegas nightclub. Bagheera the Panther, voiced by Sebastian Cabot, hears a domestic disturbance in the neighborhood and finds a baby human, or man-cub. Knowing that the baby would die without a mother, he leaves him with a pack of wolves because that's a brilliant idea, right? 10 years later, Mowgli is forced to leave the pack because Tony the Tiger wants to use the man-cub for his cereal, and Bagheera offers to escort Mowgli to a nearby man village, though Mowgli, Bruce Reitherman, doesn't want to go knowing the tragic stories of feral children in real life. At the start of their journey, they smoke oregano up a tree and then wake up from their hangovers by a troop of elephants, and the leader, voiced by J. Pat O'Malley, doesn't give two shits about the boy. After a family feud, Bagheera leaves Mowgli on the spot and is soon found by Baloo the bear, played by Phil Harris. He teaches the boy Hakuna Matata and the two become instant friends. But their playdate comes to an end when Mowgli gets kidnapped by some monkeys, who their leader, Louis Prima, wants the Krabby Patty's secret formula to fire. Baloo and Bagheera Kool-Aid man the entire temple, and Bagheera convinces Baloo to take Mowgli to the village for his safety, but happens and Mowgli runs away. He then encounters Kaa the snake, who hypnotizes the boy so he can murder him out of spite. Kaa is voiced by Sterling Holloway, who voiced some...
You want me to go over it again?
But after the victim he tried to murder escapes and might contact the authorities, Kaa flees the country and moves to the UK, where he dyes his scales yellow and go by the name Sir Hiss. Feeling like no one wants him, he instantly befriends the Beatles, who aren't actually voiced by the Beatles, but, you know, they're the Beatles. Shere Khan, voiced by George Sanders, finds Mowgli and tries to kill him so he won't learn about guns and fire, but Baloo gets in the way and lets Mowgli learn anyhow, and nearly kills Tigger because of this. After the trio escapes, Mowgli begins puberty after seeing a village girl voiced by Darlene Carr, who is the younger sister of Charmaine Carr. She uses her siren song to lure Mowgli into the village, and Baloo and Bagheera laugh their asses off. So long, sucker! Ha ha ha! The end. So let's talk about the movie. Going way back through my long-term memories room, The Jungle Book was my favorite Disney movie ever. I absolutely love the sceneries and especially the characters, and to this day, even though my favorite Disney movie is now Tangled, I still have these strong opinions. But before we get to that, I'm gonna go through the negatives first. Yes, I have negatives for my childhood movie, Grow Up. I'm going to keep this first negative short. For whatever reason, they casted African American actors to voice the monkeys. Really think about that for a moment. Second negative is easily the elephants and the vultures. Even though the elephants, like Hathi, are from the original book, their presence in this movie is pretty pointless. We get this dull, military-ish scene that would have made me glance at my watch if I had one, and that scene led to nowhere.
Dress up that line.
The second scene they appear in doesn't provide any use either. Sure, they venture off to find Mowgli, but Mowgli's found without their help. So, are they still searching for him to this day? You could have had Shere Khan eavesdrop on any other character talking to Bagheera, like, I don't know, Rikki Tikki Tavi or something, and nothing would have changed. And that poor baby elephant claiming that Mowgli is his friend. Wait till he finds out that Mowgli is living at the man village now. Mr. Panther, did he ever mention me at all? No, kid. I don't even think he remembers you. As for the vultures, they're interestingly vice versa to the elephants. They weren't created by Rudyard Kipling, but they provide use into the movie. But why are they considered negative? Well, they're boring. They have the dullest voices in this movie, no offense. Sing a barber quartet, which is a form of music that I'm not a fan of, and then they're never seen again. And they almost got grouped together with the worst character in this movie's history, Rocky, an almost blind rhino that has Patrick Star for a brain. Thank you, Disney, for throwing him in the trash. Third negative is something you hear constantly whenever someone is comparing the book and movie, and that is their choice to turn Kaa evil. For those who don't know, Kaa was a mentor to Mowgli like Baloo and Bagheera and even aided them to save Mowgli from the monkeys. But because snakes weren't viewed in a positive light at the time, Walt had the writers switch that and made him a secondary villain. While I find that decision tolerable, I can't help but feel pissed off over the reason. The Jungle Book made history. The company even considered it their greatest film ever at the time. If Walt actually braved up and turned him into a protagonist, the movie's publicity and fame could have changed that view, even a little. They could have easily had it where Bagheera and Baloo went to Kaa for help like in the novel, but when they turn him into a villain, he just doesn't do much. No plot importance, just excuse of why Mowgli needs to get evicted.
I want to stay in the jungle.
No!
Final negative I have is a lack of world building. In the book, and any other Jungle Book adaptation you can find, well, except for the 2016 version, we're introduced to this intriguing society that differs from humans. They have their own speech and views, like the red flower, we be of one blood, ye and I, the water truce, those stuff. But for this movie, they completely stripped all that and transformed this Indian jungle into, as I said earlier, a 1960s Las Vegas nightclub. But I'm letting this slide because it might have cluttered the story a bit, given the movie's length being an hour and 18 minutes long. And that was my list of negatives, and I'm honestly surprised of how short it was. I expected it to be longer, but why am I complaining? It's the Jungle Book. Of course it has a lot of positives. The best part is the characters, which was what the story writers and artists were targeting. Each of them have their own way to shine in the spotlight, and that even includes the vultures and elephants. Baloo was, and still to this day, my favorite character in this movie. He's hilarious, completely pure, and it's even better when he's paired with Bagheera, the wise and no-nonsense character. It's almost like Donkey and Shrek, or Marla and Dory. Shere Khan is outstanding when it comes to intimidation. Whenever he's on screen, you get the invincible character feeling where even he's under the impression that nothing can harm him. And to add to the baking batter, they got George Sanders to voice him, completing Shere Khan with that deep tone and British accent. I can understand people's complaints on Mowgli, but wait, didn't I already talk about this? I seriously can't believe that people bitch about Mowgli than Wart. Yes, Mowgli was stubborn. Yes, others had to save him. But he had the ability as a character to make his own choices to save himself and his friends. He pushed Kaa's coils off the branch to save Bagheera, then did it again to save himself, instead of waiting for someone to rescue him. He made the decision to stand up against Shere Khan instead of running away. He used the distraction to his advantage by tying Tigger's tail around a flaming branch. That choice was brave, and it saved everyone because he actually did something without someone's advice. And the real icing on the cake is Mowgli's final choice. The big decision that Wart didn't have in the Sword and Stone. Wart didn't accept the responsibility as king on his own, whereas Mowgli accepted the importance of living in the man village, even if it meant leaving his friends and family behind. And even though Mowgli can be, quote, annoying, his stubbornness and emotion is sort of justified. He's being kicked out of the only home he's ever known and must live in a place that his friends and family won't visit. You can't help but feel like an outsider. You can't help but feel betrayed, especially if your best friend that you've known for a little over 24 hours agrees that you need to leave. It's up and sad, and a lot of people don't consider this thought. The only negative I have on Mowgli is that he doesn't feel wild enough. Like, he's wearing a loincloth, though for censor reasons, but has bangs and isn't familiar with things around the jungle. It just doesn't convince me that he's lived in the jungle his whole life. I still think that there was potential to make Kaa a good guy, but I'll take the villain version anyhow. We don't get much snake characters in Disney films except for Sir Hiss and What's-Her-Face from Princess and the Frog. And besides, his intentions and methods are really horrifying, especially with the dark, messed up hints the movie displays, like the line, "Rest in peace, never have to leave this jungle," and even the coil hammock shot, which parallels where Mowgli will end up. And on a side note, it's interesting that we never had Baloo out of all characters interact with Kaa. Wonder how that would have turned out. King Louie is a very fun character, and he's even funny at times, and I find it ludicrous of how Louie is so understated because nobody thinks about his motives to steer him as a villain. Potential arsonist? Yep, definite antagonist. As for the story, I really like it. When revisiting this movie, I thought I was going to end up agreeing with other reviewers about how plotless and boring it is, how it's Mowgli being passed to one animal to another. But here's the thing. You're of course going to see this movie as bad, boring, and pointless because you're looking at it all wrong. The main character isn't about Mowgli, it's about Baloo and Bagheera. You can even get that impression when you look at the original movie poster. Mowgli's name is omitted, and Baloo and Bagheera are the first ones mentioned. Even in the credits, Mowgli's one of the last to be mentioned. I seriously can't believe that some of the most experienced movie reviewers on YouTube missed this huge detail. The plot isn't an orphan boy must choose where he belongs, and so on and so forth. It's actually two fatherly figures share one goal, though their methods are the complete opposite. Will they win the argument in the end, or will they be forced to think of the child's happiness and not their own? To look at the plot like this, that will make Kaa and the monkeys have equal importance to Shere Khan. They're the examples of danger Mowgli could get into if he stays. And come on, you can't help but feel emotional after Mowgli leaves the jungle. It's such a good ending. But do I prefer the direction Bill Peet was aiming towards? A little. I'm at the point where I like both Bill Peet's take and Walt Disney's, but if I was forced to give an answer, I'd choose Disney's in a heartbeat.
Oh, you're really letting the oxygen out of my...
Even though that's the end of the negatives and positives, reusing that gag reminds me of something that I just want to express. People poke fun at the Jungle Book for reusing scenes. I see it all the time on the internet. But what they don't understand is that Disney has been doing this sort of thing way before the Jungle Book. And reusing animation isn't a crime, especially if it's from their own studio. They're saving money and energy because animating isn't as easy as tweeting. It takes up time, it overworks them, and do they really need to waste about 2 days of drawing Kaa falling down a tree when that was already done? You'd be reusing animation too if you were an animator, though you're probably too busy playing Fortnite to realize that.
Okay, that's enough sugar for you.
So now all we have left are the songs, most of which you'll recognize instantly, and we hadn't gotten so many great songs since Sleeping Beauty, since Sword in the Stone was forgettable and Dalmatians had too. As always, I'll be ranking the songs that don't start until 13 minutes in, from worst to best. In 6th and last place is That's What Friends Are For. I said it before, I'm not a huge fan of barber quartets, but props to Bill Lee who did Shere Khan's singing voice. 5th place, Colonel Hathie's March. While it is a contagious beat, I was constantly thinking to myself,
How long is this going to take?
4th place, Trust in Me. Glad they ditched Land of Sand for this. It's fun, soothing, yet has a sort of sinister vibe to it. Only negative is that it comes and goes. 3rd place, Bare Necessities. Yep, here comes the hate comments. I really like Bare Necessities even though I didn't put it in 1st place. It's a real catchy banger of a song that I like more than Hakuna Matata, which was what inspired it to begin with. 2nd place, My Own Home. It's angelic, soothing, and pretty engaging. I love how it's used for both this and When the Wolves Adopted Mowgli, since they're both places that becomes his new home. 1st place, I Want to Be Like You. It's a swinging number that's pretty fun and outrageously catchy, even if it isn't a villain song in the traditional sense. In fact, I even say it's underrated.
Really, really, really? Yes, already!
So that was my Jungle Book review. It was pretty fun revisiting this film after so long, and it still holds up as one of my favorite Disney movies. It's actually my favorite in this era. Despite its problems, it's got fantastic songs, killer characters, and a lovable charm to it. If you don't think about the book and just focus on this movie as a whole, then you're gonna love it. I honestly can't choose between either one. I give the 1967 The Jungle Book movie an 8 out of 10. Better than the 2016 version, and nobody can change my mind. But if you're one of those active readers who wants a more faithful adaptation of Kipling's story, then I recommend Netflix's Mowgli's Legend of the Jungle. It's accurate to the book from what I heard, but if you can't handle its dark tone and hideous animal designs, then I recommend the anime show from the 80s. It can get kiddish here and there, but with its world building and intriguing characters, you can easily get engaged, and it's free on YouTube. I was 15 and I actually teared up at the final episode. Okay, maybe I spoke too much, but if the 60s version was really good, then the sequel should be a blast, right?
Then hit it, Papa Bear.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries and your strife.
wouldn't marry a panther, would you?
I don't know. Come to think of it, no panther ever asked me.
And the shipping starts.